And now it's rubbing on the inside, so I click it on the inside. Now I've got that good clearance, no rubbing. Quickly, I'm going to take this apart just to show you how this works. So say you have this on the ground, you're squeezing your front brake, you're holding this, and you can physically feel this moving separate from the frame there. You can feel it like wobbling back and forth. So that means your preload is on there. This steering assembly is loose, which can be dangerous. These always have to be totally loosened off before you touch that. I can loosen this off, it won't do anything, but if I tighten that, and these are tight, there's that star nut that's pressed into the steering wheel, it'll just deform it and pull it right out. Which is fixable, we just have a setter tool that puts a new one in. I just kept taking this apart. That's a little wedge that helps to hold that in place. If I pull that, then this whole thing will just drop right out the bottom. So this is the threadless system. They're all like that now. Structurally way, way, way stronger. Disadvantage to change your stem height. You have to take it off, flip spacers, or change your part. Change your stem. So you see that has started to drop out a bit, so I just push this down, push that up, there we go. Really important that this top of your steer tube cannot come in contact with this flange here, or this top cap, because if that happens, they bottom out and then you're no longer preloading your bearings. So this can be quite snug, and it'll always be loose.
So if I take a spacer out here,
yes,
and I add it on top,
you don't change the overall height of the steer tube then. But usually the people do that in their fit process, and if they decide that's it, it's perfect, then they'll actually take that apart, cut it down, so you don't have that protrusion above your stem. There's no specific torque value for this. It's definitely not very tight. So I just tighten this in. I can start to feel resistance. At the same time, I'm checking that. And I'm going to tighten this a little bit more. And you can, this has got a little bit, you can feel it start to get a little bit draggy, but not much. It's just too much preload, so I loosen that off a little bit. Now I gotta make sure that's eyeball it. Take over top of the wheel. Make sure that's as straight as possible. In between them. So just these can be finger tight. To start with.
Yeah. What you got going on there, Mark?
And if it's a
taking the
it's a 5mm Alki, but the bolt, the actual threaded size is 6x1. The 6mm bolt has one thread per millimeter. And generally,
so if it
that
comes
size
off,
of fitting
they'll
in an aluminum
probably
part,
attach this
the
here,
torque
or they'll put it in a
is
box. When you put this back on,
so then I take my beam,
you have to make sure that the gap between this plate and the stem here and the gap underneath is even. Because what will happen is if you have it slightly like too close here and not, or touching here and not touching there, then the bolt isn't actually going into the stem straight, it's actually slightly bent or at an angle, and it can strip out the threads.
And then I do the other one, and then I double check.
So the best thing to do is just, and this is why I don't take the faceplate off, because it is quite half to get this back into position.
A little bit at a time, go back and forth until they're both pretty much.
Just gonna tighten it a little bit at a time.
Yeah, exactly like tiring a car.
Yeah.
Always just cross pattern.
And really important that your bit's buried already. Some of the bolts, they don't have a very deep end. Or if your tool itself, if there's any sort of rounding, cut it off with a abrasive cutter. So
Kind of an X pattern on there, right?
Yeah.
Hey Dane, what size is the medium speed concept frame size?
It's about a 54.
That's what mine is, right?
It's
Yeah.
a medium frame, right?
No, you have a large.
Oh, do I?
Yeah. Because they fit.
No, it's riveted on. It's once in a while I'll come right off of this. So when you're going to
You
get
can
that
torque
on
it
there,
that
you
way.
always start
You can,
opposite of the
yeah,
valve,
use that to get your.
and you can take
torque
it
setting.
and wash it off the valve.
So is it too tight?
They're actually a little bit loose.
Okay.
You torque them usually to about between 10 and 12.
And there's a lot of racing tubes that are just smooth and ready to thread. They don't have that washer.
What have you guys done on bottom brackets?
We haven't done
When you apply braking force,
we could do the bottom bracket on this side.
Maybe things to watch for, and sounds that that they'll make when they're not either if they're dirty or if there's grit in there. And
your tire levers. You want to start close to a spoke so you can use that back in around the spoke.
First thing, you want to make sure that it's tight.
Push it down.
So you can check by grabbing the arms. I can actually feel some loose play.
Push that all the way down to the bottom. Hook it in there. And then lever it off. And then hook that under a spoke. Oh.
Like you shouldn't be able to move that at all.
How's it coming, Patrick?
Okay.
Feel that?
Yeah,
Think
side
one
to side.
backwards. Side to side. That could be just from a loose.
Yeah, the biggest thing is, it's just be patient
So you
and
can check.
stop
Now,
and
is that
think,
your
and then
torque
it's-
setting?
Yep, there's a torque value for that.
and this would be like, but we're going to
It's actually really tight. So
sometimes you have to let this
it's probably
get that in, then
something to do with the cup or the axle
that's
of
okay.
the
You
crank.
got more rough, now it goes about there.
And what
With this hand, you can try the tire a little
what can
bit.
sometimes happen is the threads back out
Flex this
of these a
down.
little bit, or if the distance isn't quite right for it to tighten up all the way, there could be a loose spot there as well. So if you like, we can pull these apart and
Check it.
take a look at
Well, you might
what's
as
going
well.
on there.
If there's something wrong with it, I'd rather have it fixed.
Yeah.
Especially maybe that's why I have speed wobbles, maybe it's not from the front end.
So this has a self-extracting bolt on one side, meaning that you don't have to use a puller to pull it off. So with this piece here, it's threaded into the crank. Before I do the loose thing, I just want to make sure that that's tight. So the crank bolt that's holding it in is the centerpiece, and that's actually going to push against that outside and pull the arm. Shimano cranks are different in that they don't have a press fit system.
It just takes a little
They
while
use
for us to
a spline and a pinch bolt.
Yeah.
The top. It's pretty tight.
It's probably still tight from these guys tightening.
Yeah, if you had a bunch of guys over tightening stuff, that's like
This is how we were trying to get those pedals off.
almost inhumanly tight. Definitely, they've exceeded the torque value on your crank. Yeah. It's usually not a good sign.
No.
As you go put this in.
Where was that shop? At Muskoka. Like the bike shop that they brought in to do all the mechanical repairs before that race. Because Ironman said like you're right.
So you always have to kind of
Yeah.
push that over, give you some room to work.
I'd expect better of them.
Pushing this down and then
Because you pay for it too. It's not like
Using
it's pay $120
cranks.
or whatever.
Following the guidelines that are
Might
printed
see
on the
this kind
bike.
of stuff at CJ and Tri with Western Cycles sets up or something. Not at 70.
On the camera. Joking. We'll be looking for sponsorship here. We love sponsors. We really, really do. So how can you tell if they've totally wrecked it now? Like, you're gonna take it all the way off and look at the bearings?
And have a look. The individual parts.
Just to get it out of the way, yeah.
This is a job I would bring to you. I'm not gonna try and learn enough to do it at home.
Aside from a torque wrench, you need the bottom bracket cup tool. So that's the or wave washer that kind of takes up some of that.
I'm assuming that's not supposed to be straight.
No, it's supposed to be wavy like that. Yeah, it's just dried up grease with some root.
Would you take that apart once a year and like
Great idea to
grease it or
do
whatever
this once a year
and clean it because it looks
clean
like
the clean this stuff out. That's usually not very good.
There you go. So you just needed to get that started, that kind of bit.
What do you clean it with?
I use just regular degreaser to clean that stuff off.
Use your chain.
Oh yeah. I have it in a spray bottle
So now, you want to...
in kind of like a 1-to-1 mixed with water.
And I'll hold the wheel. Your hose is right behind you.
Okay, so when we were talking last night about the different kind of...
Just to give it some shape.
So this is actually a piece that's into the carbon, right?
This is a threaded piece. This is an external bearing kind of crank, and
That
still threads into
on the normal Streeter air chuck.
into the frame.
Just thread that on until it touches that.
So these ones,
That just allows you to just normal.
they're just wider.
Or like the gas station.
Right.
Just give it a quick little jab of air to give the tube some shape.
So the issue is not
That's it.
loose. Yeah. Very tight.
Now, carefully unscrew that adapter.
Get out the hammer.
Let me try.
Don't really want to do that. So anyways, with your two bikes, this kind of piece is molded into your frame, and then the bearings here press into the frame.
Okay.
Is there anything in there to check even if you get it off?
Well, not
Just
really.
to clean the old grease out and
Check
put...
the inside of the frame for water and other stuff that might get in there and make a mess. But generally, it's good to kind of lubricate the threads.
I usually line it up with the label. It doesn't have
So how big is it an issue that you can't get that off?
Not a huge issue, but if this bearing
where something's stuck in your tire.
needed to be replaced,
And they put it on a similar thing like this, and they cranked it down too much and actually cracked the top tube.
Would it be cranked in?
yeah,
Just this, yeah.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, I don't have to use
clamping it in a stand like this on the carbon is definitely not ideal. You don't want to tighten it down
Yeah.
really very tight. Same with the carbon seat post. But with this frame design, there's nowhere else to clamp it.
So anyhow, but there was a guy that actually was able to fix it. They relayered it and then glazed it. You can see that there's a patch like you patch on a canoe.
Yeah.
I
There's
guess
a couple of companies that do it.
yeah.
Craig Calfee is probably one of the biggest guys in California.
Now, when we were in the track dealership in Victoria, I was asking about it, and what they do is instead of using stands like this, they have two pulleys from the roof and they hook them around here, so that there's no clamping at the front.
The Pro stand Park uses a lot of the race mechanics use for stuff like the Tour, and they're working on these odd-shaped bikes. Just rests on the bottom of the bottom bracket and clamps on the front wheel.
Oh, okay.
That's a really good one to use as well. But you know, with the Trek stuff, they do make a mast attacher that clamps around the post.
And then sometimes on the
I imagine Sorella makes one too.
the other
We just don't have
problem
it.
is this with the tire
Not being a
is
Sorella.
off, and the tire is so small that the
Okay.
feet doesn't want to go all the way up into the
So,
So it actually looks really clean in there, right?
really clean.
Because it was probably so tight.
Yeah,
Nothing
well,
ever got in.
with the older Trek bikes, especially like the older Madones, get a lot of water coming up from the cable stop.
So this is actually like an aluminum fitting that is molded right into the carbon. Okay.
It has some kind of spines on the outside,
Yeah.
and becomes part of the bike where they do the layout of the carbon.
tire, and it's blue. And it sounded like a 12-inch shot and whatnot. It was terrible.
How's that look?
Not bad.
So you start at the valve this time.
There's a little bit of looseness in your bearing. So I wouldn't say for sure
What I do is I put the rim on my feet, and then I put squeeze the
see how it
side
looks after it's all
this bottom part
put back together.
Now,
How loose does it get before you replace it?
If it was so loose that like your chain was rubbing on your chain rings when you pedal down,
skinny, it can drop inside the rim.
that would
So you put the valve in
that'd be a
first.
pretty good time to replace it.
so and those are just standard parts. You can just, you know, once every couple of years you just order
Yep.
them.
And yeah, the bearings themselves you could also replace as well.
okay.
Take them out of the cups.
Slowly
And
your way this
you
both
can
directions.
upgrade them to ceramic or
I'll show you how I do it, then I'll take it off.
something like that. But usually the bearings on their own is about the same price as
Oh yeah, this is the actual tire. So that D should always point towards the front of the bike.
So what are you doing? Just cleaning everything, and then you're going to reapply grease.
Pull the dirt off and put some fresh grease on it.
And here's your gear, so that's fine.
Torque it back up and see if it's any.
Sometimes just doing that.
Put that in first, just so the valve
So if it makes it worse, then you know you gotta replace it.
Well, it wouldn't necessarily be worse, but if it's not the same, then the bearings would be replaced.
where my fingers are there.
And that's just degreaser.
That's a mixture of degreaser with water.
It's about there. Before and then once I do I'll take a look. I go
The inside of your
pop this edge on first, then I push my
crank arm, if you have these off,
when I get it.
it's a good idea to inspect the splines where they
Like nothing's wrapped in.
yeah where they attach. You don't want to see any bad metal marks.
Making sure that side's in.
After you clean them out. Just make sure that they're good, tight fit on their arm, and they're still good for it to compress on, and they look pretty good.
Yeah, this adds like an extra step, these blade wheels. Should also come by. You'll notice that they wind up way more tightening than when they were so you have to kind of... But one of the guys at bike school said is to put a little piece of masking tape, even if you have round spokes, put a piece of masking tape, a little flap of it on a spoke, and then as you're tightening it, you can see how much the spoke is winding up and twisting.
That bike never got in the stand.
Yeah, I'd say from there to there predominantly. So
We'll have a.
well, what maybe I'll do then is outside
Still working on what I used to.
Or like after we wrap up and everything.
I was like riding back like this. It was ridiculous. We had like